What's up, everyone? Shane back in the house for Invisible Walls episode 144. We got big announcements coming tomorrow for the PSP2. We're definitely going to talk about that today. And we are finally going to talk about Dead Space 2. I know we teased that a while ago and we left you guys hanging. We're going to really dig into that game today. Hopefully a lot of you guys are out there playing it. It's real good. I really enjoyed that one a ton. We have a lot of stuff to get to. We're going to give our hands-on impressions of the 3DS. So on the show today, we have Marcus, who you've already heard from.
Bonjour.
Daniel Bloodworth. Mr. Brooks Huber.
How you doing?
And Ryan Stevens, who's doing double duty today as our audio tech, and he's going to be a part of the show. Thanks,
so
Johnny.
This is going to sound like ass. I'd like to blame John Chang's back,
Yeah.
which I guess he threw out.
But if anybody here can double fist, it's Ryan.
And double duty.
So we apologize in advance if the audio isn't quite up to snuff. Hopefully you will bear with us. All right, so here we are. Last night, they announced the PSP2, as I want to call it. Of course, they're calling it the NGP.
Neo Geo Pocket?
It sounds like a futuristic STD. I'm sorry, I can't sleep with you. I've got a severe case of the NGPs.
Yeah.
Space herpes?
So what happens after it's a couple years old? Do they change the name of the system at that point when it's no longer next gen?
Yeah, I mean, they called it they said it's a code name, but like I said, we talked about this morning. My big question is, if we're currently on
Jeremy Hoffman, everyone.
Yeah, Jeremy Hoffman has just popped in to talk with us about
Hey
this.
guys, if we're on next gen right now, we're considering the PS3, the 360 next gen, and now this is the next gen portable. Is this next gen? Where are we at here?
It's
Yeah.
Gen
No,
Plus
is it-
Plus.
I think the Xbox and the PS3 are current gen, or were current gen, up until last night when the next gen...
These are important discussions that we need to have to figure out how we're labeling videos
This
and
reminds
how
me-
I'm going to
No,
talk
have you guys
to
ever been to
for
like the
next 4
Wikipedia
years.
page for like the generational history? You look up like the Atari 2600 and you're like, oh, it's probably like some first gen shit. There's like 12th generation, the Atari 2600. Like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah.
It's like Space Wars, like third gen. Or
All right,
something
so
like
let's talk
that.
about the system. Obviously, we don't have a ton of time to talk about this. There's a lot of information to get through. Obviously, the thing you see first is the huge screen, 5 inches, bigger than the PSP's current screen, and an OLED touch screen.
Supposed to look pretty, apparently.
No,
I mean,
it looks freaking stunning.
based on the assets that Sony have released, because they didn't allow any cameras at the press conference yesterday, so nobody turned up with proper cameras. Everybody was doing iPhone movies, which looked
Yeah, I
kinda
watched
gash.
an iPhone live stream, which actually looked better than I thought it would, but still, it was kind of blurry and hard to see. The thing I like the most about this is the touchscreen on the back of the system. It's the same exact size as the screen on the front and oriented at the same spot as this on the back as the screen is on the front. So conceivably, you can use your fingers that are underneath the system to navigate menus, to play games. They showed one thing where the guy was sort of poking the back of the system. It looked like his actions were coming up through the system and out of the screen. I think there's some really cool gameplay stuff that could come out of that. Also, not having to take one hand off the system to use the touchscreen functionality. I think it's pretty cool.
That's
very
the
clever.
that's the most exciting thing I think in the system right now. It's the thing that's moving it forward. Otherwise,
Gameplay-wise.
Otherwise, this would just be the PSP2. Like, it would just be a half step. I think this is the thing that people are going to be excited about. Developers could be excited about, and we're going to see some really cool new gameplay features. There's that marble kind of marble game last night that I saw a stream of where
And the potential for porn games is immense.
Oh.
Oh, come on!
Oh.
Stroking behind the back of your PSP.
I'm
while
just
you
curious
play
if
with
the-
nubs. What?
I'm just curious if the thumbs are going to get a little jealous that they're no longer the star of video games.
I know it's perverted, but
Two analog sticks. That's a pretty big story.
Yeah, thank God. Let's God bless the little things, right?
And they're not nubs. They're actually sticks that they say that they actually tilt. Sony actually went on record saying that. I don't think anyone's actually held it other than Sony at this point. No journalist got to hold it. But they say the sticks do tilt. They don't slide like the old PSP nubs, which is great. And there are 2. So
it's,
you can play console games on it.
and it's 6-axis.
You're right. So it has
it's
some
a full
motion
gyroscope
control.
inside it.
Yeah, and they have all that, who would have thought augmented reality would have been something people were going to try to sell,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean,
And Foursquare, right? Or whatever, the GPS stuff.
The Near, PlayStation Near. Is that what it's called?
PlayStation Near,
Yeah.
which
Which is basically the tag mode that we've had on the DS for quite a while or whatever. But obviously they probably needed to get into that space. So my big problem with it is that it looks just like the first PSP, which is very uncomfortable to play with. So they haven't really changed the form factor of it
It
at
looks
all.
skinnier. It looks a lot skinnier.
Yeah.
It's a lot thinner than the original PSP, but it's actually like an inch or two bigger.
Which leads to the big question, if it's thinner, where's the battery? Because that's our big concern. How long is the battery going to last in this thing? It's the processor's crazy powerful. I don't know if it's quite PS3 quality, but it's pretty darn close, which is something to really talk about. But with that power comes a lot of battery drain. So
yeah, they're saying that it's going to have similar battery length to the PSP one.
Yeah,
and,
5 or 6 hours.
And looking
you
at
sound like a Peter Parker's uncle. With great power comes great battery drain.
with,
it's all good.
I mean, looking at the iPad, I have an iPad. I'm able to use that. It's
Now, is that
super thin.
proprietary Apple technology, the batteries in that thing? Because
I think
you're right.
No,
I
it's
mean,
just lithium.
No, I
whatever.
think it's just lithium, yeah.
But OLEDs are supposed to take less charge. That's one of the great appeal to them.
And it looks like there's no moving parts with using flashcards for it. So
yeah, no drives that you have to run, so that should help with battery life. Still,
Perhaps they haven't announced the fact that the stroking the touchpad at the back generates a charge, gets the machine all excited.
You're not going to quit with
on.
this, are you?
no. You
So-
guys are missing all the fun visuals of Marcus stroking at home.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes we need to be on video.
So obviously the big question with any system is what's up with the software, and I think this is maybe the one point where they kind of fell short. They didn't really show any great games. In fact, a lot of the games that they showed were PS3 games that were ported over, or even PSP games.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were like, these are tech demos. These are tech demos. What Kojima's first thing when he came on stage was like, no new software.
Yeah.
Don't shoot me.
I mean, they showed Uncharted, which we can't figure out yet whether it's Uncharted 1 that's ported or whether it's a new game. That's kind of all in the wash
If
right
it's
now.
a new game, I'm in day one.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in. Like, that'll be my system
That'll be the
seller.
killer app, right?
That's what I'm,
But the thing is, they are, 9 months away? 10 months away, because they're saying holiday, so they're gonna try and get it out before Christmas. They want to put a dent, because if they don't make this Christmas, it's going to make it kind of messy for them, because otherwise the 3DS will own this Christmas.
Well, probably what's going to happen is they're going to put it out in the holidays in Japan, and then we're going to see it here in February or March.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously this event was still in Japan. Sony still has a vested interest in Japan.
Sure.
They're a very
Well, the
very
PSP
Japanese
was
company.
way more successful in
PSP
Japan.
is still a huge piece of kit there. I mean, the games are still selling 3-4 million units a pop.
Well,
I mean, they were
two of
smart.
them.
They were smart in a couple instances. Showing, Monster Hunter to us, we were like, oh, who cares? Why would they show
You
that?
love Monster Hunter.
I actually do love Monster Hunter, but I know most of the people in this room do not, and most of the people in America do not. But in Japan, it is a straight-up sensation. So them showing that to the Japanese, they're like, oh my gosh. Like, I can literally just take everything, and they haven't said if they're carrying over stats yet or not, but literally, if they're engaged in that game, it's easy for them to jump on the new system and continue playing it.
But I'm also getting a bit of deja vu, I think a lot of us are, of when the DS and the PSP first launched,
Yeah.
where I guess the real difference here is that kind of the touch screen is something more than, like, because the PSP was the promise of you're going to play console games on the go. And everyone, I mean, I think you have an ancient blog post on game trailers where you're like...
No, it was at G4. I wrote
Oh.
this crazy article comparing the DS to the PSP, and I basically just said the DS had no chance, the PSP was going to destroy it, and yeah, I ended up with egg on my face. I'll be the first one to admit it.
But so did everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone thought the PSP was the golden boy and the DS
Had no
completely
chance.
kicked its ass.
but
know,
the DS had fun, and like it added functionality that we hadn't seen before that people were excited about.
Right,
and
and
I
that's
think
where the touch screen and some of this GPS stuff definitely factors in. But then when you're like, Call of Duty's coming to this thing,
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
already came to every system on the planet.
But the question is, I mean, yes, I want to play Uncharted on the go. That sounds
and where,
awesome.
let's talk about God of War. When are we going to get the God of War PSP 2? Because
Yeah,
those
but-
games on the PSP 1 have been amazing.
But
and
they've
now that-
also tanked. The last
Yeah.
one did horrible sales-wise.
But now that we're gonna have those dual analogs, it's like I'm ready for that.
But God of War didn't really need that second analog. It was kind of just used for rolling.
Ready at Dawn
and-
is like hands down like the best
Portable
They
developer.
understand how the PSP worked and how
Yeah.
to program camera angles.
So really no games other than Uncharted, and we're still a little fuzzy on what the details are on that. But the rest of the software lineup, they showed Metal Gear Solid 4 running.
Tech demo. I mean,
I mean,
seriously, if
obviously,
we'd had
you
a
know-
buck for every time they said tech demo, we'd be at the pub drinking right now because we wouldn't have to worry about the bill.
Well, I was drinking last night because I didn't think there was gonna be a live stream, and that everyone was there with iPhones.
Well, then also, what does Sony actually send out to us for this? They send us this weird, like, live-action trailer that they made and, like, 5 stills of the system. Well, not exactly the way you
They
want
said
to
that they'll be sending some more stuff.
I'm sure they
It
will be,
says.
but I mean, this is the big day. Everyone's talking about it today.
I gotta say that live action trailer that is. I mean, it's quite literally a load of balls. I mean, it has a basketball that gets big and then small and then turns into a bajillion basketballs. And you kidnap a woman and put her on your bus and you shake your bus around.
There was a
what
good
the fuck
user
were they smoking?
No, there was a good user post who's like, I'm going to GT pop block this. And he was explaining like everything.
Well, I mean, I think the weird
good.
thing with that trailer is, I mean, it's obviously a style piece and a mood setting piece. The fact that it doesn't
appeals
end with
to
actually
youth culture.
But actually, the weird that it doesn't show the system at all in it.
At least at the end, you should have like a 360 pan of it or
Yeah,
something,
like
right?
something just to get people excited about seeing it. I thought that was weird.
Well, I think some people, if you look at the comments on our site right now, are like, what the fuck is this for? They don't even know it's for the new PSP.
Well, I mean,
But it also incorporates the whole Android
Right.
thing.
and it's pushing Nier as well.
Nier is really what it pushes more than anything, the tag mode.
No, that's why you, like I said, there should have been, some sort of just one last second of showing the system.
So you know what the trailer's
Yep.
for.
This trailer, if you don't know what it is, it doesn't speak to you.
What's interesting when you're talking about
And since it's probably going to be looping the entire time we're talking
You're
about
going to
this.
see it many times.
Now we've explained it.
we'll just put in some footage of 3DS games.
Well, let's be honest here. First of all, if they're saying that the PSP2 has the same battery life as the PSP, to me, that's not good enough. I hated the battery life in the first PSP.
Well, they've also said the 3DS is going to have shorter battery life.
Which
So
we've
that would
we've
be-
actually talked about on the show. We're not happy about that either.
There was an Ask Iwata thing, and they've updated it. So if you're playing 2D and you turn down the brightness a little and the stuff's off, you can get up to 6 to 7 hours.
That's still shit.
For what is it? The selling point's supposed to be that it's a 3D gun.
Well,
Right.
it's fine for me.
For you, it's fine. Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing I've learned in the last 5 years in this industry, if I want to take one lesson away, is stop questioning Nintendo. They're going to sell a million bajillion copies of whatever they do.
But I think a lot of people may have said that before the GameCube came out.
Virtual
too,
Boy.
so.
Yeah, but that GameCube generation,
They
was
can
a
slip
little-
up. I mean, Nintendo's
I
not
agree.
infallible.
They're not 100% perfect, but Sony to make the PSP2 or the NGP successful, they have to come with several things. First of all, they have to make sure they have enough units available at launch. They have to make sure that there are enough quality software titles for us to play the showcase the game. They've got to make sure that their online system is robust enough. And they've got to make sure that the price is decent.
Yeah,
because
what-
I'm
what are we
seeing the
getting on
prices,
price?
And that they
prices
sell
quoted
extra
at-
batteries.
Well, ideally, I mean, you're going to get this wafer with a huge humpback thing of a 15-foot battery, but the prices I'm seeing quoted are $299 to $349.
No way.
Which I think is on the low end. I think they're
yeah.
probably going to come in at about $399, which means Nintendo is probably going to own 2010 and 2011 again for the handhelds.
So let's go around the table for the rest of us here. Your prediction on the
2010's
price. Ryan, what do you think the price is going to be?
I think they're going to try to... God, I mean, do you remember when the PS3, they weren't going to have the HDMI port on the low-end version?
$599.
And then they had to throw it in. I think they're going to do a lot of... They're going to look at all this reaction. Oh, man, it's hard to say. I think it's going to be pricey, though. I'm going to say $400 minimum.
Off.
With the 3DS coming out at $250, it's going to be hard. If they're above $350, it's going to be a hard sell for a lot of people. So
Maybe some amazing bundles.
I'm going to guess $350. That's going to be the low end.
Wow. I'm going to go $449. I think like Ryan says, $400 at the lowest.
This is starting to feel like the price is
I'm gonna
right.
It is the showcase showdown.
I'm going to say the cost.
Do I win one if I get the price right then?
Well, you didn't go over.
$1.
I can guarantee you didn't go over.
So I'm going to say that it's going to be, for the unit, it's going to be $399. I guarantee you that the way it will be stacked up and released to retail, that no retailers will have bundles priced under $600. Because everything will come with a carry case. Everything will come with 2 titles, one of which is going to be a bag of shit from Ubisoft, like Raving Rabbids
and
96.
get used to fucking $60 portable games because these are going to be expensive to develop for.
Well, apparently you can
Not
do
if
them
they can
inside
port
a
them
week.
in a
If
week.
you can port them in, you can port them in a week, but
Yeah.
apparently they pay all their porting teams $1 million each.
Yeah.
I think Activision are going to be happy with gouging everybody on this one. I think you will see bundles at $500 to $600. And that's why this will be a, I was excited about it last night, and the cold light of day, I think this is going to be.
I bet
DOA.
you can get the unit for $200 if you sign up for a 3G data plan.
Yeah, how's that going to work?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
then
we haven't
start
even
to add
covered
it.
that.
Think about that, like the fact that if you really want all the functionality, you're going to need a 3G plan from who? Is it going to be exclusive like AT&T with the iPhone initially? And that's the other thing. I think Sony might position this as a competitor to the iPad more than the 3DS.
Well, teaming up with
which is
Android,
why I think that they'll try to rationalize the price that way and say, well, here's this for $450, or you can get the iPad for double that.
Yeah, I think they're gonna have to go with a non-exclusive, because it'll just. I mean, what's the point of being, for example, having a unique subscription for 3G with AT&T, and then trying to go overseas with your PSP2 and not being able to play it in a country where AT&T doesn't have a partner.
Right. Yeah. So what do you guys think? You guys think you're going to pick it up? Let's assume the price, since it seems to be the median between all of us, is $400. Ryan, would you buy it at $400?
I kind of want to wait on the software a little bit. But yeah, if that Uncharted's there and stuff, I probably will.
Jeremy?
The way my wallet works, Shane, as you know, is
I know all too well.
Things just appear on my Amazon one click, and it just appears in my house.
Funny, that's what happened with the 3DS for me last week.
I know. It's I came home last night. I had 3 packages. I don't remember ordering. So
was one of them a penguin?
No, I've tried to order a penguin before, and that got shut down. So I will have one because I am a consumer whore. But I don't know if I'll be playing it the first week if there's nothing to play, but I will own one.
Marcus, at $400, would you buy it?
At $400, I might buy it, but Sony have to really win me over at E3. They have to come with some serious games. I'm not going to buy it just to have a competitor to my iPad when I'm actually enjoying some really good games on my iPad now.
I will definitely buy it at $400, and a big part of that is all the downloadable games I've been buying for my PSP Go immediately will transfer over to the PSP 2. So
that was
a
super smart move from
it
them.
Is, yeah.
It's like that would have just pissed people off, and
well, especially people who had the PSP Go if they completely trashed their download system. So for me, at $400, I'll definitely buy it. I pretty much buy every piece of hardware when it comes out. I'm probably the only person in the state of California that has a PSP Go, so I'm definitely in. Being able to transfer all that stuff over definitely softens the blow a little bit, even if there isn't software at launch. If there's Uncharted there at launch, no brainer.
Let's see what's packed in. I think the 3DS has some really cool packed in software with the face smashing and the AR games. So. Yeah. I'd like to see if Sony's going to come out with some stuff like that. That would also help soften the blow for me if we got a bunch of cool little mini games and tech demos in there. It's like
this is going to be a big E3 for Sony.
Oh yeah,
because PSP 3DS will already be launched. Nintendo will be coming with games like Zelda, Resident Evil this Christmas. So if Sony do not have some absolute ball busters, and I'm not talking about stuff that appeals to Japan. This is a US-centric podcast. We're talking about United States of America. I want some decent Western games ready at launch and a committed launch date and decent price. Otherwise, they can fucking forget it.
Nintendo 3DS will be on retail shelves across the US on March 27th.
Okay, so next we're going to talk very briefly about the 3DS. Obviously, we've mentioned this on the show for the last couple weeks in a row. The difference being we've now had a chance to actually play a lot of the legitimate games for the system. Ryan, you went to New York. What was your overall impression of the system now that you've actually had a chance to play the games?
Well, I can't speak to the 3D, as some people may know. I can't see 3D, but blown away by the graphics. And I hate saying blown away because I feel like a douchebag when I say it. But
is it awesome?
Unfortunately, because we do camera, don't always have that much hands-on time. But I did get a couple minutes with Zelda and Kid Icarus and Resident Evil. Incredibly amazing to just look at it. I mean, I'm a big Zelda fan, maybe not as big as Mike Damiani, but it is really, really impressive. And Mike has just been working on some Zelda stuff for Pop Fiction, so I've just been looking at a lot of old N64 footage. It is, in the GameCube remake, it looks great.
So what have they done? Have they completely reworked all the character models, remodeled all the
everything that
environments?
looks up-res, none of the, none of the little, I mean, I don't know if it's all literally remade, but the character models look great. The textures look good. I even went up to Link's little house and the little Godzilla drawings, still there, looks still funny. You still can't do anything with it. It just looks so good. And
will you guys play that game again on the 3DS?
I wasn't going to, and now I'm going to.
I don't think I will.
If it comes bundled with it, yeah.
Well, it's not going to come.
I wish it would. That would be such a great.
No, it's not even in the launch. So.
There will be bundles at Christmas. I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I will or not. I mean, it's kind of like with Super Mario 64 DS. It just kind of passed on that.
Yeah, I did too. It's
I
played this game. I mean, I've played Ocarina of Time to death already. Like I finished the game, got everything, went back, did the crooked cart trick. I mean, I worked that game for everything it was worth. I don't feel like just better visuals are going to convince me to play it again.
The other thing that was kind of interesting is some of the controls were really like just running around and stuff was fine and attacking, but then like there's definitely going to be, I think, some sort of a learning curve for like having to tap the menu sometimes. I had some trouble Z targeting, and then I didn't get to do any of this, but you can actually kind of lift the DS for like aiming like the slingshot and stuff like that, which we saw demoed. So I think there'll be a learning curve. What was interesting, and this is not very good for radio, but a lot of people were playing games, both hands, hands on the D-pad, hand on the buttons on the other side, and then they had the stylus kind of grasp between their middle finger and their index finger for like quick tapping. I don't know if people are going to be finger tappers or use the
I've played
stylus.
DS games like that.
I never really have, but I saw a lot of that happening with like the train staff and the journalists that were there that were trying it out. Kid Icarus.
Why does that suddenly look like the most underwhelming game of all of them?
It plays well. I thought the land stuff was a little underwhelming. It seemed a little sparse. Like the actual character models are still okay, and it's actually pretty fun to play. I don't know if they were just trying to make it like all of these were kind of like set as like 5-minute demo. Nintendo knows how to set up a demo.
Yeah.
I had the controls inverted, so I was having the person who played before me. So I was having some real problems for a while. And in Resident Evil, I remember we thought it was all pre-rendered. No, it's all. It's all being generated real geometry, but it seems like they're kind of dry humping the cash cow there because it's basically just the Mercs game. They're using all the they're remixing the levels from 4 and 5.
Yeah, I mean that game is the cash in, and then the other one that's coming out like a year later is the real one. Yeah.
I mean, it's still fun. Some of it was kind of easy to do. You can shoot and walk at the same time, so they've already changed it a little bit. But we kept trying to pick things up, and it said it was the Y button, and it kept on just taunting, and taunt animations were like 5 seconds long, so that was no good.
One game I saw that randomly really impressed me was Lego Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
That's going to be a good game to check because that's going to be coming out on all the other systems.
The graphics blew my mind.
It's going to be a really interesting game to kind of see how that compares to things like the regular PSP or the regular DS because it's going to come out on all those form factors. Yeah. So I'm expecting any new technology. I think there's going to be probably a small learning curve, but you can kind of pick it up and go. The ARGs, or not ARGs, the augmented reality stuff was kind of cool. I mean, a good parlor trick. Like the little card was like a little like a little shooter game. Impressive. I mean, it's in the same way that like iPad's kind of impressive. You probably won't do it more than a couple times to show your friends, but some cool stuff. And Virtual Console games, was playing Super Mario Land.
How do you like the stick for actually playing games?
I thought I wasn't going to hate it. I had an old Fujitsu laptop that had that kind of thing for moving the mouse.
Type thing, yeah.
It works really well. It didn't really annoy me or anything like that because I just had the bad memories from the laptop. It worked well and no complaints there. I think it's just, for things like Zelda where you're used to playing it with, like the GameCube controller, the N64 controller, bit of a rework.
Now, is it truly analog? For instance, can you just barely tap it and, Link will tiptoe?
No, it's totally got, it's probably got, like most things probably has like the whatever 256 degrees or something like that. Yeah, but impressive stuff. And like I said, I was the control, not caring about the 3D. Games, they look solid. It's definitely a graphic showboat. I thought it was interesting. The bottom screens were really, really sparse. So it makes me wonder if there's going to be... We have a lot of games now where the touch screen is the main screen, so all the 3D is going there. I'm curious if they're going to do that because then it does kind of sacrifice playing it in 3D.
Right.
So it actually is going to kind of split the traditional game development, I think, for...
system.
DS games, because a lot of DS games, the active screen was the touch screen. Not for all the games, but here, if the active screen is the touch screen, you can't have the 3D. So that's an interesting tidbit.
So having played all these games, a lot of which aren't launch games in the US, the price now is $250 in the US, which is a little steep. Are you buying one at launch?
Yeah, I'll put down a pre-order. I mean, if I can get one, and it comes with 2 gigs, 2 gigs of memory. So. I think they're making some good calls. I know it sounds silly to be just blown away by the graphics, but I hadn't seen it. I didn't get to see it on firsthand at E3, and I was really impressed, and it feels good.
All right, so next we're going to talk about Dead Space 2, but to sort of preface that, we're actually going to talk about the iPad version very briefly first. Marcus, you've been playing it. What's the deal with the game?
Well, it's actually really cool and a smart piece of sort of like marketing from EA. Dead Space HD on the iPad is out now, and it's $10, and it's a direct prequel to Dead Space 2. So when you go into Dead Space 2 and you're in the sprawl and the necromorphs are all over the place.
But wait, Dead Space was the prequel to Dead Space 2.
But this is the immediate prequel to you starting Dead Space 2.
Maybe a prologue.
A prologue, yes, indeed. That could be a smart word for it.
It's a pretty big gap between.
Let's argue semantics.
Because basically,
there's 3 years. Technically, technically in time there is, but you've been basically locked up on this space station since then.
Well, basically, you don't play the same guy as you play in Dead Space 2. You play a guy named Vandal, who is basically dropped into the sprawl, and he's working for a wacky church of unitologists, I think they're called.
That's what they're called.
And basically, these are the guys who send him in with a view to unleashing the necromorphs on the sprawl. So basically, you go in, you think you're doing something good, and you're going to bring down a government. You end up unleashing the necromorphs, and the unitologists abandon you. So you are basically, for the next couple of hours and 12 chapters of the game, you are stuck on the sprawl trying to survive and get out. And there's some really really psycho type stuff. It's probably the first really, really good iPad game that I've played where I don't have any issues with control.
How does
the
it
atmosphere. It's got a little virtual joystick on the left-hand side, so back, forward, left, right controls how you run. Just touching the screen anywhere else moves the camera. But yeah, you can use the plasma cutters. You can use any of the weapons that you find, and you can also use kinetics to pick up stuff and throw it. And it's actually really atmospheric. I mean, they do recommend that you play it with headphones, and I did that. I dropped the headphones on, and I gotta say, it's kind of scared the bejesus out of me.
Wow.
At times I was playing, in my house at night, headphones on, just focused on it, and the game looks pretty good. It is in HD. It looks pretty good for an iPad.
No,
game.
it looks really good. We're looking at it right here at the table, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, and this actually just popped up today because I think Dead Space 2 did launch yesterday. That if I register the iPad version now, I can basically get a cool unlockable for Dead Space 2 when I start playing that.
Cool.
At home later. So I've got to say, it's
$10, right?
$10. It's a very smart piece of marketing from EA. It does, as a prologue, serves very well. I'm now looking forward to going back to play Dead Space 2 when I get home. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm hoping that more people are going to do games like this because it actually stands in its own right as well. You don't have to go and play Dead Space 2. And for $10, you can't really go wrong. So yeah, I'm giving this 2 thumbs way up. I actually really, really enjoy playing it on my iPad.
Okay, so let's move on to Dead Space 2 proper. Review went up night before yesterday, which is midnight's always kind of hard to describe. Have you guys all been playing it? Have any of you played it?
I just played the multiplayer. That was it.
I haven't played it yet because I've been playing. I want to finish this first and then go into Dead Space 2.
Ryan, have you had a chance to give it a whirl?
I played the demo.
Okay.
Much like...
Oh, yeah, I did that
Yeah,
too.
I played the demo at Comic-Con, I think. Yeah.
Wow.
So fire away, guys. I'm actually the guy who played the game, reviewed the game.
I predicted your review score earlier. I don't know if you do if you don't know that I do this, but in Justin's office on the dry erase board behind the door, I will go in there and I will review games long before anybody else does, and I pretty much nailed it on your review.
Did you know I was reviewing it when you guessed the score, or did you just say we're going to give
No,
it
I did
this?
it like 2 weeks in advance or something.
Oh, okay. So you didn't know I was going to review it. You just figured this is what we're going to give
Yeah,
the
this
game.
is what we're going to give it. It's just always a shot in the dark, And with Dead Space 2, my expectations are pretty much high for the game. And for that game, what sells me more than anything is just the atmosphere, and I love the character art. I just love going through that game. I would not play the multiplayer, let's just put it that way. Was not impressed with that. I want to know how the single-player campaign went down, and if it was better than the first one, you think?
I think it depends on your perspective. The first Dead Space reminded me a lot of Metroid Prime. Like, you had very little interaction with other people. You're very isolated. You're kind of piecing together the clues in the story from audio logs and things that people who have died have left behind. This game, you definitely do not feel as isolated. Parts of it you do, but it seems like you'll go through like an hour or two stretch, and then they'll bring the story back, and they'll have cinemas where you're interacting with other people in the sprawl, and then it'll go back to that sort of grind again. I don't want to just call it a grind because that's kind of a negative connotation. Yeah. I actually like
slaughter, back to the slaughter.
Yeah, I actually like those parts of the game better than the story. I think one thing people might think when they first start playing it is that it's very similar to the first game. And the first couple hours, it is very similar. Like,
how could it not be?
It almost feels like it could have been an expansion pack at first. But as the game goes on, it really starts to open up. They open up a lot more gameplay opportunities. Just the fact that Isaac now has thrusters, a la Iron Man, it completely changes all the zero-gravity sections now. So they're actually functional, and they're not these discombobulated puzzles where you're trying to figure out which way to go and how to orient yourself. And so they work a lot more into that as well. Like, you actually have missions to accomplish other than just getting from point A to point B before your oxygen runs out. Although that's a little bit of a part of it too.
Okay.
And then again, other gameplay types start opening up, and it does actually turn into kind of its own monster, in the second half of the game. Story's kind of crap. At the end, they do all kinds of crazy stuff with it that people will never guess. And so it kind of redeemed the story a little bit for me at the end. About halfway through the game, I was like, this story is ridiculous, and I didn't really care about it at all. And at the end, they kind of do manage to kind of tie it up nice and make it a little more relevant.
What about the new weapons, though? I was pretty from the
Yeah, it's
demo.
all about the
I like
weapons.
the spike gun or the rail gun, whatever that's called. And
Yeah, I mean,
what else do they have?
Well, every weapon has an alternate fire, and what I found
Yeah.
with most of the weapons is the alternate fire is a lot more fun to work with. So you have like the gun that you were talking about, so you can fire the spikes, but you just don't fire the spikes. Once you fire them, you can alt fire and actually electrocute them. So you can use that strategically. You can use it on one enemy. The enemy gets stuck to a wall. The other enemies come around. You hit the alt fire, and it electrocutes all the enemies around that enemy.
So it's more useful than just being for Flash.
No, definitely. One thing I don't like is you can't pick up the ammo for it later, which is kind of lame because they're just spikes. You think you could go and pick them up and like reuse them again, but you can't.
Yeah.
The other one is the other weapon I used a lot, and I'm surprised I used it a lot, was basically it's like a proximity mine that you just shoot into the ground, or you can shoot it on the wall. You can shoot on any surface, and then as they walk by, there's like lasers that come out of it. It trips, and it'll blow up. So one thing I would say about this game, there's a lot more strategy to the combat. And some people will like it and some people won't, because a lot of times it's trial and error, but it's fun trial and error. So towards the end of the game, they really start rushing the enemies at you. Literally, you'll fight like 20 or 30 at a time, and they'll send them in waves. So you'll get a wave of 6, and then they'll send a wave of 5 or whatever. Well, because you're constantly conserving ammo in this game, there's a lot of times where you're like, shit, I have like 4 proximity mines left. I have like 10 rounds of my plasma cutter. I have like 10 spikes left. And the first time you go in one of these rooms, you just get slaughtered. And you're like, okay, well, what do I do this time? So the next time I set up I start trying to remember where the enemies come from. So I'll drop a proximity mine, make sure that I line myself up so it's a direct line between where they spawn and where I am. So when they spawn and they come at me, they run right into the trip mine. So then you do that and you realize, okay, well, that guy was smart enough to like run around it. So it's this constant evolving thing where you're trying to figure out how to use what weapons you have to clear the room and move on. And I think some people might find it tedious. I actually found most of it to be awesome. It was some of the most fun I had in the game because it's really rewarding when you finally figure out how to kill them all. There's one that happens in a high school gym, and there's so much open space that you're like, how am I ever going to get through this? Well, you start to figure out that there's a stage in the gym, like most high schools have.
Spoilers.
Well, there really isn't a spoiler because...
No, I'm just letting people know that if they want to get to the high school gym level and they intend playing the game, perhaps...
But there's so many ways to get through these. So it's not like me telling them how I did it. It's really going to affect how they played. I'm not going to tell them exactly how I got through this room. But, I figured out that
I want to play like Shane.
But I figured out they had problems getting up the stairs up to the stage where I was. So basically what I would do is I would sit on the stage. They'd come rushing over the bleachers to come at me. I'd drop a proximity mine on the stairs. They'd all kind of congregate, start to go up the stairs, and boom, it would blow up like 5 or 6
I can just see the Necromorphs being like, fucking camper.
Yeah, exactly. But it's stuff like that I really, really loved about the game. And bottom line is I really did love this game. I agree with...
How long is the campaign? Is it like...
It's about 12 hours. It's
Oh,
pretty much the
longer than I
same
was
exact
expecting.
length as the first one.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Would your mom hate this game?
My mom would be completely mortified by this game. I've seen a lot of people talking about that commercial, and people are like, oh, that's hokey, that's funny. But I was driving to work the other day, and I was listening to sports talk radio, and these 2 random jocks on the radio were like, I saw this crazy commercial for this video game where it showed moms like watching the game, and they were just disgusted by it. And they went on, and he's like, oh, I saw that too. That was freaking hilarious, blah, blah, blah. They went to a commercial break. They couldn't remember the name of the game at all, which I don't know what that says for the marketing. But then they come back and they're like, oh, yeah, the game we were talking about was Dead Space 2. So while we may think it's a little hokey, like you can see that it definitely had an impact on other folks. And I think that's what they're trying to do with this game. They're trying to make it palatable to a wider audience. There's a lot more action in it. There's a lot more set piece moments in it. There are a lot more cinemas in it. And so I think they're trying to broaden the scope of it a little bit without selling out.
I'm not criticizing the ads. I
Yeah.
just think the ads are very smart because, I mean, the key thing about any ad is that it gets people talking. And it's funny, you've got hardcore gamers sort of like dissing and, sneering at the ads like, oh, they are really hokey.
Yeah.
But they are actually, getting people to talk about
They're
it.
memorable.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, my mum would be really disgusted by them.
Oh my
but
God.
at the end of the day, the game isn't for the mom, but it gets people who don't normally talk about it talking about a game like this because we'd like this game to succeed. Dead Space 2 was good, didn't sell perhaps as well as it should have.
Or the first Dead Space, you mean?
Dead Space 1, rather. Yes, we want Dead Space 2 to sell really well because we want more of these games to sell as opposed to Just Dance.
Now, I have my loaded question. So Dead Space 1 was a great game, but it was obviously the biggest
no-brainer in the history of mankind.
biggest fan of Resident Evil 4 that was out. Now, I believe you gave Dead Space 2 a 9.0.
Yep.
And you gave Resident Evil 5 a 9.0.
Yep.
Which game do you like better?
Definitely for me, Dead Space 2.
Dead Space 2.
But I'm a big,
out.
look, I'm a big horror fan. Like, I love horror movies. I've watched horror movies since I was
And RE4 obviously kind of dropped the whole horror aspect of it.
Well, RE4, you mean RE5?
RE5, yeah.
Yeah. RE5, that wasn't scary to me at all. This game is legitimately scary, and that's what I was going to say, is that they do a really, really good job of walking the fine line between keeping people happy who really love the first game, but still cracking it open a little bit to the new player. So I never felt like offended, like, oh, that's obviously so my cousin will like it or anything like that, and like people that like the first Dead Space won't. Like they pace it in such a way too that everybody gets a little bit of something they're gonna like every hour or two. I just think it's a really intelligently designed game without sacrificing what the fans of Dead Space are really going to expect from it. And I agree with you. The multiplayer, it's fun for a little while.
It's a good distraction, and it's kind of cool to play as a necromorphs. I can't even say
Necromorph.
it. Necromorphs.
But it seemed like it got less fun as I played it.
And
like,
there's just that one mode, I assume, right?
Well, I
Where
mean,
you take
it's
turns.
You just basically flip-flop. One time you're the engineers, next time you're the necromorphs.
Yeah.
And, there is the leveling thing. You can level up both the engineers and the necromorphs, and they get new attacks and things like that. So there's some kind of incentive to keep playing, but what I found was that the more I played it and the more I really dug into it and really started to understand whether there was balance or not, the less I liked it. Like, I hated playing as the necromorphs, personally. Like, if you play as, like, the little babies, like, it's impossible. The timing to get to land on an engineer and start swiping at them the window is so small.
Do you think it could just be a learning curve, though? Because I remember when I first played as the Infected in Left 4 Dead, it was pretty challenging. But once you learn how to, smoke someone or
I'm
vomit
sure,
on someone,
over time you'll probably get better, but...
Or do you think it's just innately a little off?
Yeah, I just wonder how much of a chance people will give it. I mean, so can you expect people to... Okay, well, after 10 hours, it turns out to be really good. Are people going to do that? Like, it kind of needs to be fun and accessible out of the gate. And it kind of had a novelty for the first hour or so, but after the novelty wore off and I started actually trying to get good at it, it became incredibly frustrating for me. But I don't want to finish our discussion about Dead Space 2 on that because I want it to be positive because this game really is awesome. Definitely not for everybody. If you get really squeamish, you can't stand horror films or gore, stay far, far away. I mean, they go way overboard on the gore. I mean, and I love it, but
some of the death scenes are the best.
Oh, they're brutal, man.
Isaac dies.
And I said this in the review. Sometimes I literally just died on purpose. If I'd run into a new creature or a new situation, I'd just die to see what would happen to Isaac because they're very creative in their.
It's like a fatality.
Yeah, if you guys ever see deaths in any of our gameplays, especially at live events, we're just trying to see how the character dies. We're really good at games.
Yeah. So anyway, I highly recommend Dead Space 2. I think a lot of people are going to like it. People like Gears of War are going to like it. People like Resident Evil are going to like it. And I don't think it really apes too much from either one of those games where you're going to be offended. Take the multiplayer with a grain of salt. Maybe you guys will like it more than I did. I wasn't too into it. But I definitely recommend it. Go out and pick it up and turn off the lights and be ready to get the shit scared out of you. That's it. Episode 144 in the books. A big important message for you guys. Game Trailers TV is completely relaunching. The show has been completely reworked. I think most of you guys will be happy with the changes. It definitely moves a lot faster now. We don't sort of sit on the same game for a long time. It moves a lot quicker, a lot more segments in the show. I think each show is going to have something for everybody now, where I think before, if you didn't particularly care about the one game we were focusing on, there wasn't much there for you. Now there's something for everybody. So the show relaunches Thursday night, actually aired last night for you guys who are listening to the show on Friday, but we just got a re-air on Saturday mornings at 10:30. And I know a lot of you are going to say, oh, I can watch it online, but there's nothing like watching that show on your 50-inch plasma/HD TV. The show
OLED.
OLED TV or LED TV.
Jeff Keighley in 3D.
So support the show, guys. I mean, I don't know if you guys have realized or not, but there's not a whole lot of video game television at this day and age. And the reason why there's not is because nobody watches it. So if you guys really want our hobby to stay on the air, I hate to say it, but you guys got to support these shows. That's all there is to it. And we're not just saying our show. It's really video game TV in general. Like, if you guys want to see it on any network, on our competing networks, you guys got to support it. And I know the internet's very accessible and easy, but every one of you that watches it, we really appreciate it. So check it out. If you can't catch it on Thursday nights, try to check it on Saturday morning, or at least DVR it and check it out. I think there is definitely added value in watching it on your television. So with that, I'll get off the soapbox and say thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Invisible Walls is up and out.